Today, we are asking for abolition of the federal death penalty.
While we are in the midst of a national reckoning on racial injustice, abolishing the death penalty must be a part of that debate and that discourse, because this is a racial justice issue.
How we as a society treat those who are at the lowest level, that is the greatest reflection on who we are as human beings.
We gotta make noise. We gotta be louder about this. This is our country. The death penalty is inhumane, and we should not have it in these United States of America.
This is the time to rise up. Join us at Death Penalty Action.
Great, thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on this panel. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Mona, and I am with Equal Justice USA. We're a national organization that has a vision of a world where violence is rare. And to do that, we work across the spectrum of violence to prevent, interrupt, and to also promote alternatives to violence. So we're very excited to be here today. I'm sure others have noted that today is International Human Rights Day. I come to this work ending the death penalty from my time at Amnesty International, where I met Magdaleno and have done death penalty work with I'm sure many of you who are on this panel for a long time. So as I said, I'm really excited to be having this panel. We just recently launched a new Spanish language website, and that was supported by a generous grant from the European Commission. And as you know, we live in a country where the contours of the death penalty are indelibly shaped by race of the victim, race of the person who commits harm. And, part of the work that we need to do in terms of dismantling racist systems is to really start talking about all of the ways in which, systems like the death penalty, systems like the criminal legal system are racist and unfair. Before we dive in, I want to note that the experience of Latinos and the death penalty is also intersected by how migration is criminalized. You probably have heard the term crimmigration, and that's one of the many ways in which we see the intersections of these issues. The website, and we're going to give a tour of it at some point during this webinar, that builds on our work with Latino communities to both educate and advocate for an end to the death penalty. And we felt like it was really important to provide resources in Spanish. And so we hope that you'll take an opportunity to visit the website and share with those of you who have members with whom Spanish is their first language. So without much further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to our speakers that are going to help us gain a better understanding of the death penalty's impacts on the Latino community. Juan Cartagena was advertised as going to be joining us on this panel. He sends his apologies. He is actually got double booked accidentally. The National Hispanic Caucus of State Legislators is having their conference right now. They are also having conversations about police accountability, criminal justice reform, and we'll be talking about our website as well. So we are sad that he's not with us, but he is talking about this work in another forum. And Latino Justice have been really great partners of ours over the years. And so we are always excited to have an opportunity to sit with Latino Justice when we are able. Before we go on, I just want to remind folks that you are free to type questions into the chat or into the Q&A function of the Zoom. We're going to save some time at the end to answer those questions. So go ahead, and as questions come up for you, go ahead and drop them into the chat. But I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first speaker, Clemente Aguirre. He was convicted and sentenced to the death penalty for a crime he did not commit. In 2008, he became the 164th person to be exonerated from death row in the United States and the 28th person released from death row in Florida for a wrongful conviction. Florida is one of those states that has very high rates of sending innocent folks to prison and to death row. Upon his release, he was immediately taken into ICE custody, pending deportation. And awaiting a ruling on his asylum claim, he now works to share his story and fight to end the death penalty so that others do not have to experience the same injustices that he suffered. those are my sirens, and so I'm going to turn it off to you, Clemente.
Well, hello everybody. Good afternoon. Like Mona said, my name is Clemente Aguirre. I am from Honduras. I'm 40 years old. I came to this country in 2003, looking for a better future, like many people. But more than anything, running from gun violence, right? My neighborhood and the neighborhood I go to school used to be bribery gangs, and every time I go take the bus, I was undressed in front of people to show the Adam had tattoo for the bribery gang. It was very shameful, but stressful. But open your eyes, right? In the kind of country that you live, and the opportunity is not the same like in other ones, or this one, to be honest with you. So in 2001, after somebody put a AK-47 in my face in front of my girlfriend at the time, and my mother thinking I was somebody else, is when my mother and I talk and decide that the best thing for me is to run away from that violence. A week later, they killed one of my best friends and thrown in front of his house. And they told me TikTok. So what I understood by that moment in time, that I was next. So I went to Nicaragua for a little bit to my grandma, and 2 months later, come back to Honduras, pack my stuff, whatever I could carry, and came on my way to the United States. Swim Rio Grande, like many illegal immigrants, almost drowned, run away from immigration or ICE, and thank God I make it, right? I passed through it. It took me a week or so to make it in front of my sister's house, which I didn't have any water, any food, anything, right? Um, I was cutting grass with my brother-in-law in a certain point in my life when I was in a golf course shaving some palms, and chef saw me and say he liked my work ethic, and he would like me to come to work to his restaurant. There was an Italian restaurant, he said. I said, I don't know nothing about Italian food, sir. I just know I like to eat it, but I don't know anything about it. He gave me a job as a dishwasher. Then he saw me cooking and offered me a job as a pre-cook. Meaning I prep the food for all the cooks in the line, right? I will cook the cabbage, do the calamari, do the pasta, you name it. No longer after that, I always thought, and my mom always teach me that a married couple should live alone. And my sister and my brother-in-law, I was living with them, and I didn't feel comfortable with it, right? So I asked my sister to please find me a place to live by myself. We find this trailer park where two Mexican cousins used to live at in Vagabond Way, Altamont Spring. And we asked them if I can move there, and they said yes, as long as I pay my rent and everything. And I lived there for like a year or so, year, 1 month, something like that. And I become very friendly with my neighbors who didn't speak Spanish. I didn't speak English. We just drink, do barbecue, party together, you name it. So on Wednesday, June 16, I think it was, or 2004, it was my day off. And my roommate told me his wife was coming with his son to live in the trailer. So he gave me enough time for me to move because he wants his son to go to school here in America since he's American citizen. I say, okay. I don't like to leave everything by the end. I like to do things early. So I went and looked for a place. And I found this place with three brothers used to live at, who I knew. And I asked them if they can rent me a place to be. And they said, you're in luck. We move into an apartment, but they don't allow us to take our dogs with us. If you take care of them, we leave everything in your name and you make sure you pay the rent. Okay, sitting down, we start drinking. And we've been in a bender, drugs, alcohol, you name it. By the time of 5 something in the morning, I want another beer, but I didn't have none at home. So I decided I'm going to wait for daytime to go to my next door neighbor house to ask for a beer like I had done hundreds of times. And when I went there, I found them dead. Imagine an illegal immigrant who spent $5,414 to come to this country, and it took him 3 months and 16 days to make it here. My first thought was they're going to deport me because I am illegal, right? I never thought, and I say this all along on my speeches with legislators or college, you name it. I never was afraid that I'm going to be charged with this double murder thing. It was like a horror scene of a movie. You know, blood was everywhere, everything was thrown about. So I decided against to call the police and I went home. Then police came to my house and I say, I need to talk to you. You know, this is the best country in the world. You're going to find out I was there anyway. So this is what happened. And so I start telling them about the first victim. They start accusing me of rape and that I killed them. They, when a Latino man give that sexual desire and a woman say no, it's your job to make them say yes. And I say, no, what you're describing to me is rape. I was raised with 5 sisters. My mother, even the dog was a female. I was the only male there. So when a woman say no, is what you mean. No, right? You cannot make her say yes. I was accused. I was charged with it. And then I was convicted of it. And then sentenced to 2 death penalties and 1 life sentence. Spent 10 and a half years in death row, 14 and a half years total incarcerated. For the first 3 years, I cried. I'm sorry, for the first 3 months, I cried. I didn't know what to do. I never been incarcerated in my life. I never have been put handcuffs on my hands. Never interact with police. Never having any kind of trouble. You know, normal trouble a teenager will do, but nothing they call the police or anything like that. And I got like an epiphany, right? I pray, and all I heard was, "Are you gonna let them kill you, or you gonna fight?" So I asked for a Bible, and they told me that was hell and earth. The Bibles are for the street. I figured that if I have a Bible in English, having my Bible in Spanish, it would be easier for me to translate. That wasn't the case. Somebody thought it was funny to send me a penthouse book letter, number 417 pages. And I read it 17 times. And it took me a couple of years to read it. And eventually I started to understanding what they were saying. They imagined it was very filthy English and whatnot. And I started laughing uncontrollably. I say, you have such a weird sense of humor. This is me talking to God. You went and find the filthy stink to teach me something. I learned English. I wrote 175 letters. I wrote organizations, Innocent Project, you name it. Only the Innocent Project wrote me back, and we went from there to test the DNA. They say my DNA was in the crime scene. I know it wasn't because I didn't do it. And it took us 3 years from the day they took my case to prove somebody else's DNA was there. I was denied again in the trial because we didn't know who that DNA belonged to. They knew they didn't belong to the victims. They knew they didn't belong to me, but they didn't know who they belonged to. If I cannot say who it belonged to, apparently it's very difficult to prove my innocence. Then we have confessions, we have videos of the daughter and granddaughter of the victim confessing of the crime. And I still got denied again in a 64-page ruling. You know, sometimes you want to give up, right? You want to give up hope after all the fight that you do for many years, and everything is a denial to you. But hope also keep you alive, right? It's a reason to keep on fighting. And I learned something throughout these years, and there's no on your time when things are going to happen. It's in God time, right? You have to be patient. You don't know what the plans of that He have for you. So thank God in 2016, I went in a trial after 6 months and 20 days. Usually Supreme Court in Florida take 24, 26, 28 months to rule. In my case, the rule in 6 months and 20 days, a unanimous decision. I went in a trial. I went to trial in February 2018, and I got a mistrial because people were Googling my name and whatnot. I didn't know what Google was. So I asked what Google was, and they told me apparently you put a name of somebody and appear all the history. Technology has come far along, man. When I went in, they got the flip phones. The day I get out, they put me in FaceTime with the son of my lawyer. It was amazing to me. Cars parking themselves. It was crazy, right? I got stuck 15 years ago, right? In that moment in time. Now I'm trying to catch up. So all I can tell you is you can see any type of color or race of people in that row. But the majority of them all has something very similar. And is the low class people, right? They're very poor. They cannot afford an attorney. They cannot have a good representation. They don't speak the language. Latino people more than anybody who come from another country is very, very difficult to learn English because for me at the beginning, everything is backwards. It's like you're dyslexic, right? You see everything everywhere and you don't know how to put it together. And you don't understand why. It's amazing. But once you start getting the hang of it, believe me, it's very fun to speak it and be understood what you're saying. Um, it was a hard time, the time that you think you're never gonna be exonerated, right? But then when you get out, and after all your mental health issues, it starts setting in because you do have mental issues. Imagine being locked up in a 9 by 12 cell, 5 days out of the 7 of them. You don't have no place to go. You only see 3 walls and a set of bars. Sometimes you're allowed to talk to people, sometimes you don't. You on your own, that's it. You by yourself. If it wasn't for organizations like Latino Justice USA, Equal Justice USA, uh, Floridians Alternative Against the Death Penalty, Innocent Project, Witness Innocent. I mean, all these people who fight to abolish the death penalty. Uh, it's amazing, man. All the job that they do, all the effort that they put, that not many people will do. So I decided I'm going to give voice to the voiceless. And I started going to Tallahassee to speak with the legislators before this epidemic came by. I used to go to college, the University of Florida, Florida State, University of Miami, USF here in Tampa. And I see the perception that people don't have the understanding or the knowledge of what's going on. When I tell them I am number 28 exonerated from death row alone in the state of Florida, then now I think it's 30 or 31, if I'm not mistaken, and 164 from death row alone in the United States. That now I think it's 170 or 171. I'm not sure. My number is not the accurate, but one is a mistake. I always say this: one is a mistake. More than that is blood loss. So it has to be a way that we should abolish this punishment. Uh, Number one, because we ain't God. We shouldn't take the life of somebody who did wrong, if he did wrong. Number two, we need to make sure that people who go be incarcerated or is trial it's no doubt about it, right? It shouldn't be a doubt about it. DNA should be mandatory. And I believe judges and state attorneys shouldn't have 100% immunity, at least in the state of Florida, is the way it is. I'm fighting hard against that. I know I'm one single man or simple man who used hit the drum, but eventually I'm gonna get to that forest. It's gonna be echo, and it's gonna sound hard. I really believe that. So thank you for having me, and I hope you get a better understanding of how uh, the justice system hurt people who doesn't speak the language, because I really can't understand even half of my trial.
Clemente, thank you so much for telling us your story and really adding so many more layers on how how the death penalty is unfair, and how it really, you know, in every place we identify different areas where the death penalty harms people, particularly people of color. I think it was so important for you to talk about the language barrier, and there are so many cases, not just to folks who have been exonerated, but people who have been executed who had language barriers, who didn't have treaty access to their consular officials. And, you know, it's just one other layer that is so important for us to identify. So thank you for sharing our stories with us today. If you have questions for Clemente, please put them in the chat, and we're going to come back around and have an opportunity to ask those specific questions. But I'm going to turn to our next speaker, Magdalena Rose Avila, also known as Leno, someone who I have known now. Leno, I think I was trying to figure out how long I've known you. I think it's been maybe over 20 years, but we'll just call it, you know, 15, and pretend we're young spring chickens still. But Leno is a long time human rights activist and a leader on immigrant rights, civil rights, and death penalty abolition. He was an organizer with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta in the United Farm Workers Union. That's where he learned organizing and started embracing nonviolence. His international work with worker movements and gangs has given him a very unique insight to finding hope in valleys of despair. Leno is a poet, a political historian, and he has started writing for Latino newspapers in Chicago and Philadelphia. Leno, thank you so much for being here. Can you talk a bit about your tenure in this movement and what you've seen in terms of the harmful impacts of the death penalty on the Latinx community? And I also would like you to talk a little bit about the importance of having resources in Spanish to mobilize communities against the death penalty.
Well, let me start with the second part that you talked about. And I have been very excited by EJUSA's Latino webpage. It's very important to have that as a resource. I've been crying and wanting to do it myself, but never could get it organized. So it's important to have that information, because we need to tell people about how the death penalty is affecting Latinos, because they're sort of forgotten. It's important to know the racial breakdowns, with African Americans receiving most of the punishment, and then Latinos coming in, and the understanding. And Clemente's case of, and what you were talking about, Mona, about the language difficulty, Juan Melendez went through the same thing, not knowing English. And, you know, even if you know English, most of us have not been in a criminal court situation. And especially as young people, you don't know what's coming through it. Clemente, just so you know, on my border work, in the last 2 years, I've housed various Hondurans who came across in the caravans and were seeking asylum. And they are really victims, people who are immigrants, to the law enforcement, because they're an easy prey for either deportation or saying they're gang members or the criminals. So it becomes very important. And when you work with the most vulnerable and the people, and Clemente said it right, it's the people who are on death row that don't have the resources. I gotta tell you that, little confession here, I was for the death penalty. Growing up, I saw all the abuses that happened to Black people and Latinos. So they said, well, do you believe in the death penalty? And I said, yeah, we had to kill all the white people. But that was not right. And when I went to work for the United Farm Workers Union, I learned about nonviolence. And when you learn about nonviolence, you know that everybody's life is valuable, that there are people who are immoral of every color. It's not just white people. We have some Latinos African Americans, Asians, who are in powerful positions and do very bad things to people. And especially if you know the history of our own countries in Latin America and the dictatorships that we've gone through. So nonviolence really gives you a handle, and that's how I really got into the movement. And I was able to come into it with Amnesty International along with Mona, where they gave me an opportunity in the South, the 13 states, to work against the death penalty. And in that process, I met Brian Stevenson in 1986 when he came to talk to, he's one of our legends, current living legends in the death penalty movement, came to talk to my Amnesty members about the death penalty. And he was a legal intern with Steve Bright at that time. And I was a Southern Regional Director. Also in 86, I met this person who's been a thorn in my side ever since then, Sister Helen Prejean, who a Catholic nun who's done the most incredible things with her book, with her visits to people on death row. And she was just visiting a prisoner on death row yesterday. And her ability to bring people of faith and make them understand they ought to live up to the morality of the book that they study every day and who they pray to. And also I got to meet in 1988 Bill Pelkey, who we're celebrating as part of this conference. Another great voice came to the death penalty, and I went and met him and invited him to one of our annual Amnesty meetings. And my directors tried to fire me for bringing him and a Catholic, Franciscan monk to the Amnesty annual meeting. They said, what do we want with religious people? Well, this movement has room for religious, for us heathens, for everybody to be involved in working out the segment of capital punishment. One of the untold stories has been the effect that it has on Latinos. We know that, in California and other places where we have heavy concentrations of Latinos, there's a lot of violence in the community, a lot of deaths, and a lot of Latinos dying, and people want protection. What we've not been good about is talking to our own community about what are the effects of the death penalty and violence, and how do we get out of that violence? Because some of our people don't understand, and we also want an easy solution. So they say jail them or execute them, and that's not the solution, because we know that all the judicial system in the United States is race-baited. It's based on racism, and that you will not get a good sentence. And it's not only the people that get a sentence to death row, but they use the death penalty in every state when they bring in a young person, and most of them are young, and they start questioning them. They say, well, if you don't cop or accept this lower crime, then we're going to give you the death penalty. So you'll find a lot of people that are serving 20 years or life imprisonment without parole, that they've used the death penalty as a whipping stick to intimidate them and to get them to charge it. And they frighten so many young people that we have people who didn't commit the crime who confess to the crime. We also have many people who are jailhouse lawyers who come in and lie, and they said, it was Clemente, he looks like every other Latino that was in the neighborhood. So then pick up Clemente or pick up the black guy. And that's what's wrong about the system, is that one, it's not fair. That's why we fight to get new district attorneys who have conviction integrity units that because police give the reports to the district attorney and they use that report for making their convictions. And conviction integrity units that we fought for in the DAs means that you're going to have, before the defendant is charged, there's going to be a senior attorney that's going to look at that case. And, we have Larry Krasner, who is a super district attorney in Philadelphia, who is not only cleaning up his office, but is also going back and look at other cases. And the same thing is going to happen with the new Los Angeles district attorney. He's going to go back and look at the previous cases to see the mistakes that they have made. It's human to make mistakes, but we shouldn't make them when they're about life and that. And I think that what happens in the abolition movement, and I've been talking to Ashley, a friend of mine, via email and messages today, that there's Sister Helen is great, Bill Pelkey was wonderful, Mona's great, Leno's sort of great, But what it is about the abolition movement, human rights movement, is that all of us, it's like a puzzle, and we own a little piece of the puzzle, but when you put them all together, we have a beautiful picture and a great movement to do it. And the solutions are not easy. And right now, we're in a difficult time when our president, Trump, and Attorney General Bill Barr want to execute federal prisons. They started that process early on in this year because they wanted, as part of his presidential campaign, that he was tough on crime. You know, he has a history of being racist. On the Central Park Five, he went after them when he was a citizen, ran full-page ads saying that they were guilty and they got to be executed. And even Clemente, after DNA proved that they were innocent, he still came out and said that he didn't believe the DNA, and he felt that they still should be executed. And Amnesty International and civil rights groups fought for the case of the Central Park Five. And I was happy to be part of that fight and was living in New York at that time. But it's those of us who stand up, and Eva DuVernay, when she finally made the film about these guys, really told the story about how racist the system is. And we have to change the whole judicial system, because we know that the schools are a pipeline to prison and to the death penalty, so that we know that by age 3, that if students, in particular people of color, are not reading and writing well, they're going to intersect with the criminal justice system. That's why they call it from school to prison pipeline. But we know that the more educated that our kids get, if they get a high school degree, less chance of getting involved in the criminal justice system. They get a college degree, even much less, a master's or a PhD, they're probably not going to see it unless they do white collar crime. But most of the it's education based, economic based, family based, that we need to provide to get rid of it. You know, when we're having difficult days like now, fighting the president of the United States, we have a lot of hope. We have so many new voices in the abolition movement that when Mona and I and other people were starting out and doing all this work, we didn't realize that we were going to have it. Who would have believed that EJUSA would have a website in Spanish so that we could educate the public about Latinos that are being put up in prison and people in the race of their victims, so that we could convince people. And I should just tell you that, Mona, yesterday I did an interview for Univision, and today John Crane set me up with an interview in France, and we did it in Spanish. And both times I claimed to be part of EJUSA. They say, so I'm a member of EJUSA if you'd like it or not. I said, I'm an associate and a partner with them, and celebrate that we have this webpage, because we're making progress. We're changing people's, and since 1986, 85, when I really got involved in this issue, we've had a lot of states overturn it, a lot of countries abolish the death penalty, and we've changed a lot of minds and hearts, and we become smarter. You know, so when we talk about Clemente, you know, we talk about your case and your innocence. The sad part about your cases, and many cases of people who are exonerated, is that the criminals are still out there. We never give closure to the families of the victims. We never give closure to the families of those people who were executed or wrongly convicted. They never give you back your life. They never give you back the money. This whole judicial system about taking a life is about destroying other people's lives. And those of us who work in against capital punishment, all of us also suffer at one level PTSD, because it is very painful to watch people that shouldn't be executed, and some of them innocent, that a government shouldn't be doing that. And we always question, well, what could I have done? What more could I have done? What could I have been involved with? So I've been one small part of that little puzzle, and I'm happy to see that the voices are growing. And you know, Clemente and Latino USA and all the other groups that are getting involved, and the evangelical Latinos who are coming out against the death penalty. We need everybody's voices, and it doesn't just need to be me and Clemente and Mona. We need everybody's voices. We got to have un coro de justicia, ¿verdad? que está cantando la canción al público. We need a chorus of voices that are going to be talking about justice. So I know that that we can change the world, we can save lives. And I got to remind people, you know, when we started working to free Nelson Mandela, who was in prison for 27 years, a lot of people told us he'll never get out of prison. He's going to die in prison. But we did it. And a lot of people, when they started out, Clemente, you started sending out your letters, like so many other death row inmates, who believed that somebody would finally listen to you and get involved in your case. That's why we have to keep struggling, because we know we can change the world. People on the outside, because you never gave up hope, Clemente, they were able to help you save your own life. So I'm happy to be here today, not because of what Trump and Barr are doing, but because I know we're building a movement of hope, and together we're going to change the world.
Thank you, Leno. Hope is power, and action is going to change the world. So we are very excited that our movement continues to grow, and we are continuing to be more sophisticated in how we understand and talk about the death penalty, and how all the problems that we see inside the death penalty are problems that we see inside the broader criminal legal system. And I think there is a very, very large tent for this work. But we have a couple of questions, so I think I'm going to take some questions, and then we're going to do a quick tour of the website, if that works for everyone.
Great.
So Clemente, we have a question for you, and there's a question asking, was it difficult for legislators to take you seriously? Did you find that people were, and policymakers were, supportive as you started to enter this fight to end the death penalty?
Somehow, I gotta be honest with you. At the beginning, when I went there, I want them to put a face on the story, because they know the reality of the situation, or how death penalty works in Florida. Unfortunately, for people like me and many Latinos and African American people, we live in a red state, right, where death penalty is a big thing here. It shouldn't be, but it is. So the more I went, I realized the way I came about it was to try to abolish the death penalty, period. And they weren't perceptive about it. As long as people keep on voting for the death penalty, we are not going to want to hear it. That is not going to happen, not in my lifetime, and bunch of nonsense. So on my third time, I think it was, I remember talking to Herman Lindsay and Christine, who is part of the EJR, and I remember that I remember telling them that maybe if we can change the law on make people accountable for what they're doing and start hitting their package, they start paying attention, because it's nothing they bother politicians. They give money away, and if they start seeing exonerates getting paid, because they passed a law in 2008, I think it was, and only 4 people have been paid, and it's 30 of us exonerees. Nobody else has getting paid, no compensation, nothing at all. So it was that thing that everybody started listening to it a little bit more, and maybe from there we can go to the next step. But believe it or not, I think with all the traveling that we have done in the past year, we make a lot of ground, and a lot of people are perceptive, and times is changing, and things are going to change too. I really believe that. Listen, nobody says it's going to be easy. Not even Jesus. Jesus say it's going to be difficult. People are going to persecute you in my name. So the way I see it is, it's no walk in the park, and we got to do the work. It might take a long time, it might not. But yes, at the beginning they were not perceptive about it, but with time, their mind has changed a little bit, and I think we're going to make a lot of progress this year coming up in the session.
Thank you. I think every year we see progress being made as more and more people start to understand all the different facets of the death penalty and how much it is harmful both to folks who are system involved, folks whose family members are, and individuals who even work inside of the criminal legal system. We have learned from former guards and wardens who participate in the system how harmful it is. We've heard from spiritual advisors. Leno, you talked a little bit about secondary trauma from those of us who are doing work to stop executions. We have often heard, as you talk to folks about the death penalty, people will ask, well, but isn't it a life for a life? Shouldn't we want to have vengeance on this person? And Leno, you talked a little bit about how your intersection with nonviolence has brought you to a place where you understand that being against the death penalty means being against the death penalty for everyone. Can you just talk a little bit more about that intersection of nonviolence and how you came to really understand that the death penalty is harmful no matter who is being
Well, I
executed?
think that one is that you find out, and I grew up on the streets and worked with gang members in El Salvador and Los Angeles. And one of the big things in gangs is payback. So if somebody shoots or hurts one of your gang members, then you go immediately and shoot and kill another one. And that was really a tough lesson to be able to teach to gang members in El Salvador, and then in LA, where we had Hondureños, Guatemaltecos, Nicaraguenses, and Koreanos in our gang organization, Homies Unidos, is that you find out that we had a joke in Spanish. What did the goose tell the gander tell the goose? It's que le dijo el ganso a la gansa, venganza. And, it's a play on words. Come on, let's go for vengeance. Vengeance doesn't heal anything. And we make mistakes. And the thing that you find in a lot of the people who have come before us as our teachers on morality teach us that love is stronger than hate, and that you can change a lot of things by love. And what you find out that it's not worth your time and effort to hate the person, but to hate the action or the policy or the deed that they're doing, because people can change. I mean, I just do another one of my confessions. Maybe this will get me into heaven if I confess enough. I was a small-time drugs dealer. I was violent. I had 20 guys who I armed. I used to carry 2 loaded pistols to kill anybody who disagreed with me. And it was wrong. And violence is not a way to change society or to make you heal. I think one of the things that we find out, and psychologists and sociologists tell us, when you keep that anger inside of you and you never allow yourself to heal, it begins to destroy you. So over the years since I embraced nonviolence, people say, well, so-and-so said something, or they did this thing against you. What are you going to do about it? Well, I say, I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to talk about it, but I'm not going to hate them, because I can go to sleep at night because I don't hate anybody. I hate sometimes the actions they do, but personally, they're not worth my time. What's worth my time is people that you can change their hearts. Now, look, if I could take gang members from El Salvador, from Central America and LA and Black brothers and sisters, and teach them a road of nonviolence and respect for life. Because, even in our gang communities, and I created this organization that Alex Sanchez now runs in LA. He's a former MS leader. We believe that a policeman's life has the same value as a gang member's life, right? So we don't want the policeman killed. We don't want our people killed. But if a policeman does something that's wrong, then you got to prosecute him. And I think one of the problems that Clemente was talking about is that we have rules that give people, they have basically an amnesty, and judges and prosecutors and police can lie because they're not going to be prosecuted. If you started prosecuting district attorneys and police for lying, judges for lying, then you'd make a change. But as You know, if we lie, we get put in jail or in prison. So I think we have to turn the justice system on its head and say, you cannot have immunity. You cannot have immunity. If you're going to lie in court, then you need to be prosecuted. So all those people that lied against Clemente, that lied against Juan Melendez, that lied against so many of my other brothers and sisters who've been in prison, not only on death row, but other places, they should be prosecuted. They're the ones. And you know, jails are not the answer. Jails are not the answer. Most of the people that are in jail did not commit violent crimes. We have to find a smarter way. But I think, you know, Mona, it was very difficult to embrace nonviolence and to accept everybody as an equal. In my community, I started being bashed by the homeboys in the neighborhood. They said I was gay, and I wouldn't mind being gay if I was gay. But they said I was gay, trying to demean me because I no longer carried a gun or wanted to do drugs, or I didn't hate one group or the other. But I found that I can love everybody, and it's a clean love, and it's a way that heals me, because, you know, and sometimes it's difficult. And I talk about when you're outside of prison and have somebody executed, sometimes it can be maddening. I remember one time I was at San Quentin and they were executing a brother, and it's about 2 a.m. and I thought I was going to go nuts because I didn't know if I'd done enough to try to save his life. And so about 3 o'clock in the morning, New Orleans time, I called Sister Helen because I needed to hold on to somebody, because I felt like I was going to fall in this deep rabbit hole. And she held on to me with her voice and her counsel, because there's nothing wrong about willing to ask for help. And I needed help that night. And, but I think that we just have to be open and understand that the most powerful weapon we have is love, not hate. And we got to approach people with that way and accept people and bring them along. If I could change, anybody could change.
Thank you. Leno, I think you really identified, you know, this idea also that the death penalty is not an effective response to violence. And, you know, if we want to build a world that is free from violence, we need to reimagine the way we hold people accountable and really reimagine how we want to move forward together. One final question, and it's both for both of you, and it's historically American Latinos are predominantly Catholic. Have you seen a propensity among Latinos coming from that place of faith and therefore being more against the death penalty? How do you see the intersection of faith and the Latino community and their stance on the death penalty?
You want to go first, Clemente?
Yeah, well, when I was born, not by choice, but I was introduced to church. They was Catholic, right? And with time, you know, you start thinking on your own. Okay, which way is the way I want to go? Well, I believe this or I don't. The majority of people of the Latino community coming from Catholic Church is what they've been introduced to in one way or another. You know, for the parents, grandmothers, brother, sister, friend, significant other, you name it. I think there is a lot of people in that road. Is Catholic. You see the rosaries, or we say in Spanish rosarios, and you know they pray and they keep in certain manner. But yes, I do. I believe the majority of Latino people in their row, at least they I saw were coming from a Catholic church or Catholic beliefs.
Let me, you know, one of the things that I found, in particular, Mona, when we saw the 2 initiatives that were done in California on capital punishment to abolish it, is that people presumed that we were going to get a certain percentage of votes out of the Latino and the Black community that we didn't get, in particular the Latino community. And I have found over the years working in politics that even though the teachings are very clear now in the Catholic Church, that not all Latinos where Catholics agree with that or practice that part about being opposed to the death penalty, and evangelicals the same way. I think that we missed the boat in talking to Latinos that you need to go into their homes and talk about the issues that they're concerned about. And one is safety, and one is about how the system is working, because we have not done enough work. I think that having this webpage that we're going to talk about gives us the data and a place to send people to see what the problems are with the death penalty. But we need to have a lot of conversations with Latinos, because even family members who are of gang members sometimes in LA tell me, well, my son deserves the greatest punishment, without talking about why did your son become in a gang, or how did the racism in the social system affect them. And I think that's one of the bridges that we want to cross. And the way we cross it is one by reaching out with love, but also having the data and the information. And that's what this webpage is going to give us, the armaments, la información, the information, to be able to explain to people, here's how it's practiced, here's what the value is of the murder victims. Clemente, you and I could kill each other, nobody would make a difference. But if you were white and I killed you, then everybody starts getting excited about that. So we have to talk about that stuff, and we have to educate our families about it's not a just system, and we have other ways of dealing with this, and we got to find a way to diminish violence in our communities. And obviously I have other solutions, but they would take too long. But I think the first part is being informed and being available to go talk to family members and do them. And your story, Clemente, is a great story to tell people, because you were not an English speaker, you were an immigrant, you were helpless, you were railroaded, you did not understand the judicial system. And that's the story of all the people who are poor and young who get into the judicial system. So you're gonna be the Bible we're gonna take to people.
Great. Thank you. So we're going to do a quick tour of the website, since Leno, you just gave that great pitch for it. And then we probably have time for one final question.
All right. This is Sarah Kraft. I'm also from EJUSA, and I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a tour of this website that we just launched yesterday. Please forgive me, I am not a Spanish speaker, not even as a second language. So bear with me here and help me out, Leno and Clemente. But this is EJUSA en Español, and it's exclusively in Spanish, and right now has exclusively information about the death penalty. As you can see here at the top, we talk about how the death penalty affects Latino communities, and that it's time to end the death penalty. Here we link to some information that's specifically about Latinos and the death penalty, Latinos in the United States, talking about how innocence is an issue for Latino communities. We've had exonerees like Clemente. Also talks a little bit about how immigrants have special rights when it comes to criminal acts, that their embassies have to be notified, and how that has not been the case in several death penalty cases. So the United States has been breaking international law in that way. So there's some extra information there. If you would click on this button that says read more. Then further down, we have a series of fact sheets. We link to a fact sheet that's sort of generally about the death penalty, talks about the various flaws in the death penalty, and then 3 specific fact sheets that talk each about race and fairness, innocence, and victims' family members, and all of that obviously still in Spanish. And also each of those fact sheets, those pages that have that information include downloads for when we can see each other in person again, and that can actually hand each other pieces of paper. Then further down, we have 3 more resources. We have a couple of stories that we tell. One is about the cases of Carlos de Luna, and another case from Texas in which the person was executed, even with strong evidence of his innocence. We have Clemente's story here that we were really honored to be able to publish in his own words. And then lastly, and one of our most popular resources in English is frequently asked questions about the death penalty. And that includes a lot of myths that come up and a lot of people who don't understand the different flaws with the death penalty. This answers a lot of those questions. So it's a pretty simple site. Those are the main pages. We have a little bit of an about us section, but I encourage you to go and visit it. I'll paste the link in the chat box so that folks can visit it. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for giving us that tour. Before we wrap up, we have one more question that came in, and I think we have a little bit of time for it. Leno, I think this question is for you, but I think probably both of you can answer it. The question is, Leno, you talked earlier about your switch and perspective from hate and violence to treating people equally and fairly. And the question is, how you came to that switch. So Leno, if you want to kick it off, and then Clemente, if you have anything to add to it, please feel free.
Well, I was an organizer with United Farm Workers Union, and I had just joined, and I went to go meet farm workers. And at that point, I only wanted to deal with Mexican-American farm workers. I met a guy by the name of Pete Velasco, a Filipino, one of the original strikers. And there's a whole story that I've written up. Those who would like to get the story, they should write me and I'll send them. It's called Brother Pete. And it talks about how Brother Pete kept challenging me to pass him the salt. We were at a luncheon table with other workers from other countries, and I wouldn't pass it because I wasn't his brother. He'd say, "Brother, pass me the salt." I said, "You're Filipino. I'm Chicano. I'm not passing you the salt." And he took me to school and taught me about brotherhood. And probably along with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, Pete Velasco, a humble, grape picker, Filipino, taught me that everybody was my brother and my sister, and that I should respect them. So Brother Pete has passed away, and I was able to do his wake for him because I'm the person that was closest to him when he passed away. But about a year before he passed away, I told Brother Pete, I said, "Remember that day that when you asked me to pass you the salt and I wouldn't pass it for about an hour, and I called you all these racist names?" And he said, "Yeah, I remember it real well." And I said, "Well, Brother Pete, I learned a big lesson that day." And Abe Bonowitz was with me that day in La Paz, the farm workers headquarters. And Brother Pete turned and he looked at me and he says, "Yeah, you learned a big lesson and you still have a lot more to learn." And that's what you have to do, the humility that we don't know it all and be open to changes. And that's what I like about our movement, that every time I hear a new voice, I build up my library of hope. And Clemente and AJ USA and Mona and everybody has given me more hope about what we can do in the future. Ahora es tu turno, Clemente.
Well, I was all love at the beginning of my life. Everything to me was love, kindness, laugh, smiles, party, And then the gangs come along, and I was afraid, right? That I had to get out of my country, running away from violence. And then I got incarcerated to death row. And I didn't know when they were going to execute me or not. I didn't know how the system worked, if I'm going to be executed in 3 days or in 3 months or in 3 years. I didn't know. And that fear stayed there, right, until I got sad, and then I got angry. And I got angry with the system. And realistically speaking, I wasn't angry with the system more than the people who wrote the system. because they wrote it in a way of people like me or the ones who there are being more damaged than anybody else. But you hear Leno early on, people have to change their ways and the way they feel hatred about other people or things, because it happened to me. I mean, hate is cancer. I lose my appetite. I couldn't sleep. I sweat at night. I was depressed. And all of that was because I was angry. And, for you to feel love for people, even if you didn't do nothing wrong with what they're accusing you of, you have to forgive yourself of whatever things you had done. And I did forgive myself, and I asked God to forgive me, and I was able to forgive myself in a way of, I remember when I won a new trial, of one of the inmates there told me, when they exonerate you, because they will, it might take time, but they will exonerate you. Don't come out there and say how you love everybody. No, you don't love nobody. You know how they did to you, man? You just sue them, you do this, you do that. And get out of a place what they call hell and earth, to come outside and not enjoy the beautiful things that God had give us. No, I was okay. I'm okay the way I am. I love everybody. I had lived discrimination, and you know what? I keep on walking with my uh, head high. I know I haven't done anything, and I am beautiful because this is the way God made me. So because of that, I'm allowed to love everybody else.
Thank you so
Beautiful.
much. Before we wrap up, I do want to note today is George Stinney Day. And there is a question in the audience about how important is he to the struggle against the death penalty. And just as a reminder, George was a young Black man who was 14. He's, I think, the youngest person to be charged and executed in this country. And I think since I came to be doing this work, George Stinney is someone who we have talked about as a symbol of so many of the things that are wrong with the death penalty. But I'm curious, before we wrap it up, are there other comments around how important George and his case is to the struggle against the death penalty?
I think every case is very important. And today we're fighting for Brandon's life on Human Rights Day, but I think it's more important for us to understand how we got to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the role of Eleanor Roosevelt, who is one of my heroes. And we have to remember that we have a lot of women who fought for us to be able to have some international standards. But I think if we don't, the individual cases help us put as Clemente was saying, a face on the work that we do.
Thanks, Leno. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And I want to thank our panelists, Clemente and Leno, for taking the time to talk about your experiences and how important it is to have resources for all kinds of communities who are going to be working against the death penalty. So special thanks to Abe and Death Penalty Action for allowing us to have some time on your day today. And Abe, I am turning it over to you, I believe.
Thank you. Thank you all. Clemente, I hope we get to meet in person and work together sometime soon. Don't believe everything McDonald tells you about me. But no, seriously, this is an amazing moment for our movement. It's a long time coming. It's always been, somebody calls from the Spanish media and I got to get McDonald on the phone or find somebody else, Juan Melendez, somebody that's a native Spanish speaker. And so this is a huge shift forward. And I've already asked that my colleague Scott, who handles our webpage for Death Penalty Action, put a link that's just going to say en español and take it straight over to you, just like we do for the Death Penalty Information Center. We don't need to keep to keep our own statistics and all that. When somebody else does it, so much better. So I believe, and Death Penalty Action believes, that we are all a movement together and we all get to be cooperative and lift each other up and work together. And that's why when Equal Justice USA said, hey, we've got this opportunity, what do you think? There was not a moment's hesitation. we're so grateful that you partnered with us for this particular panel. We're grateful that you co-sponsored this event and are sharing it and letting other people know about it, because that's what our movement needs, is all of us working together and setting an example for how we can move forward better, faster, farther together. So Magdaleno, Mona, I can't wait till I get to see you guys again in person, and Clemente again. Thank you so much for being with us today. I want to share with everybody that as far as we know, the execution is still on. There's nothing, there's several things happening in the courts. But what we've seen is, so far, the government has a greased rail all the way to the US Supreme Court, where they deny everything. And that doesn't mean that there isn't something that could possibly stop it. We also have to hold in prayer and hope that the president might find in his heart, or maybe just some personal motivation, to grant clemency, because that could happen too. It would be amazing and wonderful. And it's always a good day when an execution doesn't happen. So I'm seeing we're just after 4 o'clock. There's about 2 hours until the scheduled execution. My phone is not blowing up with messages, so we don't know. And of course, if this is the first time you paid attention to this sort of thing, then it may be, it could go all the way to midnight. It could go to tomorrow morning. That's what happened in July with the first 2 of these federal execution sprees. So that's the situation that we're in. And in just about an hour, Allison is going to go live again in the same place, and Magdalena will be a part of that. Rick Halpern, who's a professor of human rights, will be there to talk about International Human Rights Day and the human rights violations that are happening. Murder victim family members Suzanne Bosler and Reverend Dr. Jack Sullivan Jr., who are members of the Journey of Hope from Violence to Healing, will also be a part of the team. And we've got some other things that'll happen. We're going to be having some live interaction with the vigil that's happening at the federal prison in Terre Haute, outside where the killings are happening. And also, I'm here in Washington, D.C. We're getting ready to pack up and get out of this hotel room, where we actually just had a demonstration today at the Department of Justice at noon. And now we're heading on our way over to Black Lives Matter Plaza, where there will be a vigil here in the D.C. area. And we'll also be interacting with that, with the virtual vigil. So come back and tune in an hour. And now I just want to show you, you've seen the wonderful EJUSA webpage. I'm not going to poke around too much, but this is the Death Penalty Action webpage. And if you haven't seen it yet, if this is your first time with one of these programs, I invite you to go to the human rights, so it's deathpenaltyaction.org. Find this big box right here at the top of the page and sign up, because tomorrow we've got a whole nother set of panels, including Equal Justice USA's Hannah Cox is going to be on our panel about conservatives and people in law enforcement who now oppose the death penalty. So that's, I think, at 1 o'clock. And then at 3 o'clock, there's another one. And then sadly, at 5 o'clock is another execution vigil. And then we also have 2 panels on Saturday. And if you click on this and you get to the web page, you can register to get the free link, like many of you probably did today. And then down here, you can get, this is where you can find the current schedule. And it's pretty close to what's on the web page now. But anyway, if you go here, you can see what we're up to and become a part of it going forward for this week. And then we're probably going to end up doing something very similar in January, because there's 3 more executions scheduled in January, and there may be more dates coming as well. Sad to say. The good news, though, is that once we're done with these executions, Joe Biden has, as a policy position, getting rid of the federal death penalty. We also want to get rid of the military death penalty. That's why we have a petition right on our front page, as well as a petition to Donald Trump, and a petition to, and this link to get into a whole list of things that you can do to help fight these federal executions, and more important, help set us up to abolish the federal death penalty, which we've set a goal to do that in the first 100 days. We're going to make it a priority. We're going to really do that. So this last thing I want to show you is this video. If you haven't seen this yet, stick with it. And it's just 4 minutes. And there's this arrow here where you can share this. But I think, so Shane Claiborne was actually, I met him when he was first engaged with Equal Justice USA, talking about conservatives and evangelical Christians. But check this out and have a good day. We'll see you back in an hour. Today, we are asking for abolition of the federal death penalty.
While we are in the midst of a national reckoning on racial injustice, abolishing the death penalty must be a part of that debate and that discourse, because this is a racial justice issue.
My name is Roderick Reed. I'm the brother of Rodney Reed, an incident on Texas death row. There's a great need for people to get involved and realize what's going on. These state-sanctioned murders, these federal-sanctioned murders, they're just that, they're murders.
When it comes to the death penalty, we stand alone among our peers, our peer nations around the world. And we're usually in the top 10, sometimes the top 5 of the most executions in the world.
Donald Trump has now executed 5 in the last couple months. He's got 1 scheduled for today, and he's got 1 scheduled for Thursday. The death penalty's got to come to an end. It's got to come to an end now.
We got to make noise. We got to be louder about this. Once people understand this is happening, they oppose it immediately. Some people think it just, was shelved in the past. Well, this administration is trying to take us back. We're not going to let them take us back. This is our country. The death penalty is inhumane, and we should not have it in these United States of America.
The death penalty only creates another grieving family, another victim, and furthers the cycle of violence. I believe that the best way to honor my brother Paul, who was murdered, is to work for the prevention of violence, not to replicate it.
The death penalty is not necessary. We know that we can be safe from dangerous offenders and hold them accountable without executions. It's what we do the vast majority of the time.
My son had 3 execution dates, and there were 3 dates where he was to be released. It is an emotional roller coaster no family should have to live through. We are all more than the worst thing we have ever done.
It is not easy to stand here before you and talk on these issues. While my brother is still on death row, we've been fighting for his life for almost 24 years, but it is a must that I do so. It is a must that we come together as a community and fight.
How we as a society treat those who are at the lowest level, the condemned, the guilty, that is the greatest reflection on who we are as human beings. So join us and please support this cause. There are real lives at stake.
I seek to enlist all of you as community builders in this third reconstruction to truly build a world that is more equitable, that is more just, that sees and affirms the humanity of everyone.
Here's the good news. A majority of Americans want to see alternatives to the death penalty. So this is the time to rise up. Join us at Death Penalty Action. Go to our website, support what we're doing, join some of our public actions. This is a time that we need to raise our voices for life, and we need to stand against death in every ugly manifestation it has, including state executions and federal executions in America.